People have been asking me how did I attach my finish line to my gravity platform, so let me go ahead and show you how I did it. I got this carpet runner at Home Depot. You get a peek at what's underneath. I built my platforms out of wood, but where they butt together, sometimes there's a little bump, so I use cardboard sheets to level out the transitions. I designed this area to be a 1/64 scale quarter-mile drag race, so that means I need at least 20.6 feet. You actually need a few more feet after that because you need runoff. You can't have the cars just immediately crash into a wall. Well, you could if you wanted to. This part's a little slow, but you have to be careful because you really have to think it through. I want to make sure I do it right the first time. You know how it is. Measure twice, cut once. Well, that's what you got to do. So right now I'm being very careful and double checking everything. I want the finish line to be centered in between both sidelines, and I want it to be a quarter scale mile from the starting gate. I'm using 3-inch brackets made out of zinc. I'll talk about the screws or bolts later on, but as you can see, they're inset. They have like a triangle head. I will need to pre-drill a hole in the wood for the bolt to slide through. I'm trying to find out which drill is close enough so that I could get it snug and not have it be sloppy. It's a good idea to use a scrap piece of wood to test the hole size. That feels perfect for gripping the wood and not splitting it. But in looking at the bolt, I think this one might be a little bit short. If you can get a hold of a square, that would be very helpful. This way I can keep it square with the edges of the track. Because the finish line has to be straight across. You can't have like the left side closer to the start gate than the right side. That doesn't make for fair races. It's a little tricky because the sides of the finish line are not exactly flat, so just do the best you can. Pickles. Nah, it's just my jar of spare nuts and bolts and screws and stuff. You know, you got one too at home. These are expensive. These are aluminum, but I'm not going to use them for anything else, so I might as well just use them up. Let's do a little test assembly to see how it would look. Now, of course, the screw's going to go down through the wood. The washer is used to give a nice flat surface for the nut that's going to be underneath the track. Even though this regular nut will do the job, I'm thinking I might want to use butterfly nuts or wing nuts. Well, they have different names. I don't screw this one in all the way first because I want to make sure that the second one gets lined up with the hole. Now I'll go back and tighten up the first one. You don't want to make it too tight because you don't want to strip the wood. Even though the finish line is firmly in place, I still want to reinforce it from underneath. After bending over and trying to attach the nut, I realized I do want longer bolts. Might as well get some more drill bits. And I'm going to get those wing nuts. I'm not worried about attaching the brackets to the legs. It looks like all of the electronic components are in the crossbar, because when I shine a light through the legs, you can see right through it. It lights up and I don't see the silhouette of any components inside the legs. That being said, please use tools and safety equipment, and you're on your own. But that being said, if you notice one of my brackets are a little crooked, doesn't matter. As long as it holds the finish line straight across, that's good for me. Here's another look at how I use the cardboard to make a bridge across my different platforms, thus leveling out my racing surface. I could put shims underneath the legs as well. This is just an easier way to do it. And I like having multiple platforms, so this way I can put them anywhere. I already cut some holes for the brackets in the cardboard, but I need to do the same for the carpet, and this is much more important because I want it to look real nice. If you notice, the finish line actually sits on top of the Super 6-lane track. Let me use some connectors to see how my distance is between the track and the triggers. It looks like the gap is about 4 connectors wide before it hits the trigger. Now let me test it out with my setup. Get a regular piece of Hot Wheels track and the 4 connectors. It looks like the carpet is kind of pushing up a little bit, but it's pretty similar to how it is normally set up with the Hot Wheels Super 6-lane. I'm quite satisfied with this result. One thing that I forgot to take into consideration is how the carpet and cardboard will affect where the holes line up when I go to drill holes for the side legs. Oh well, let's see how it works. Another thing that I found out, these side pegs are in the way of the bracket. I'm just going to cut them off. I used a bandsaw, but I'm sure you could use a pipe cutter as well. There's a seam on the side, so I'm trying to avoid that. I'm not sure how long of a machine screw I want to go through the leg, so I have several different lengths to try out. I already pre-drilled that hole, but now I want to use one of the screws to tap the threads of the screw. Of course, you'll want to do this for each hole. Since I pre-threaded the holes, it makes this part much easier. That square is going to come in handy again. If you don't have one, you can eyeball it, or maybe even use a book or something that's absolutely square. I mark my spots, but to pre-drill the holes, I'm going to remove it from the bracket. With the other side of the finish line being close to the wall, I'm going to have to get a little bit creative. Of course, I could have moved the whole thing away from the wall, but I'm a little bit lazy. Sometimes it's a good idea to finish it by hand. This way you don't accidentally strip out the threads with the power tool. Well, here's my first test. The Hot Wheels model Suzuki GSX-R. Now let me talk about the start gate. At first, man, they gave me this piece of yarn, but I noticed when I pulled it straight down, it pulled on the track. So instead, I'm using fishing line, and I have it going straight back. This way it doesn't pull down on the track. Otherwise, the cars get bouncy. You'll get vibration using both methods, but I found the one pulling it straight back has a lot less bounce. I just have the fishing line going down underneath my gravity platforms. You can see an eye hook. This way I keep the fishing line in place. There's a closer look if you want to find them in a hardware store. The reason for me attaching a fishing line is because I want to do the start gate remotely. So I just have the fishing line wrapped around this piece of wood. I did put notches in it to help keep it in a groove. And you see, I can stand way over here, stand out of the way of the other cameras. You can tell where my eye hook is underneath the gravity table right there. Just give it a little pull. There you go. Either done. While I do have my finish line attached here, I'm not calling this my Super 6-lane racetrack. This is my gravity platform. I can use it for lots of things. What you think about that? Have fun with your toys. Bye-bye.